Hey guys, long time no talk. I don't want to start all my videos apologizing for long absences, but unfortunately, here we are. So I'm sorry, I'll try to do better. Anyway, you read the title. Today, we are here to talk about Elden Ring. If you follow me on socials, you find that recently I decided to take on the daunting undertaking known as Elden Ring. This game is my first Souls game, so I pretty much entered the game with my knees knocking and my tail between my legs. I was very much expecting to be humbled by the game at every point in time. I didn't think I'd actually be able to finish it, but after rethinking my life a couple times, a lot of tears, and maybe almost jumping off a ledge, I actually managed to finish it! You guys already know all the hubbub about Souls games being incredibly hard games, so I'm not about to be a broken record and start repeating all that stuff. I'm basically going to keep this video mostly to facts and personal experiences. So right off the bat, when I opened the game, already the main theme was epic as heck. Like literally just landing on the menu and listening to the main theme right there, I was already like, you know what, this might actually be kind of fun. This is gonna be pretty epic just from the music alone. Heck, I listen to the title theme even when I'm just doing like regular tasks sometimes, and like even regular tasks suddenly become like 50 times more epic. Anyway, once you load up the game, you're given a chance to create your character. Now, if you're like me, you're gonna spend quite some time on the character editor because the character editor is vast. Like, the options it gives you are insane. You can adjust almost anything about your character. Their height, their build, the way their face looks, the distance between their eyes, their nose, their mouth, eyebrows, color of the hair, color of the skin, literally everything. So it's very tempting to just spend hours and hours trying to create your character on there. But of course, most people argue, oh, it's not worth it trying to spend hours to create your character because you'll be covered up by armor anyway. But look, I'm very particular about these kinds of things. When I play a game with character creation, I usually try to make the character look like me, like whatever I look like currently, like the color of my hair or whatever, I try to get it like as similar as possible. So I end up spending like quite a bit of time trying to get it to look like me. After you customize your character, you now get to select the class which your character will start with. So different classes come with different perks, so this probably depends on the kind of playstyle you're trying to achieve. For me, personally, I went ahead and picked the samurai because I'm a weeb. So right after that, the game drops you in some sort of a tutorial area, and I was actually pretty thankful for that because the way people talk about Souls games, I was thinking the game was gonna drop me right in front of the final boss with no equipment and no way to fight, and I was just supposed to somehow figure it out on my own. So I was actually quite relieved when I was dropped in some little tutorial area. But something interesting about the tutorial area is that it's almost entirely missable. And I think this fits really well into one of the main themes of the game, in that the game will never ever force you to go anywhere. It will basically, the game is so non-linear that the game allows you to do whatever you want whenever you want. It's entirely up to you. So the world of Elden Ring is vast and beautiful. It's called the Lands Between. Even just the starting area, Limgrave, it's a looker. It's a looker. I really wanted to explore everything around me, but even by the time you're getting to about mid to late game, some of the areas you're going to be seeing are literally works of art. I was in awe. Seeing how beautiful the world was almost gave me the same kind of feeling I got when I was playing Breath of the Wild. Like I kind of wanted to explore everything and go everywhere. Also, I'm really sorry for comparing it to Breath of the Wild. I know every reviewer and their mom is out there doing the same thing, but unfortunately, it's kind of like the same feeling that Elden Ring gives me in terms of exploration anyway. Anyway, traversal in the lands between is made extremely easy because we're given a horse called Torrent. Torrent is pretty awesome because I think like the best thing about him is that he can double jump. I think all horses in games should be able to double jump. It's a game changer. Like, I don't know. I just really like the fact that he could double jump. And, you know, when Elden Ring dropped, there was this whole theory that was going around. The fans were saying that the horse was named Torrent because if you wanted to try and pirate the game and you search like Elden Ring Torrent, all that would come up would be like pictures of the horse. I thought I was like, if that was true, I think that's really hilarious. Anyway, the horse handles like a dream. So much so that you can even take some of the fights you encounter on horseback. Because the handling is just that intuitive. Speaking of exploration, did you guys know that this game has no quest log at all? You know, funny thing is, I only ever noticed that it had no quest log when I realized that I had accepted a bunch of side quests from NPCs, and I was like, you know what, let me get to work on those. And I brought up my menu, tried to check for them, and I was like, oh my god, there's no quest log. So that was a bit jarring at first for me, and a lot of people may find that jarring as well. If you're used to games that have big quest logs where you can see what you've done, what you need to do, and so on. So that was rather jarring for me. So when you play this game, it's either you have to have a galaxy brain to remember almost everything, or you can get like me and just write the stuff down. I literally have a little notebook where I was taking note of the quests. I would write whatever would happen, whichever NPCs I would meet and what they would say to me, because sometimes some of the things they would say, it sounds like they're probably just talking from without, but it's usually a side quest. So I would usually just note down like brief notes about them and whatnot, and I would also just take my progress in the book to remind me of things I've done, like whether it was specific bosses I'd beat and which places I need to go and whatnot. Another thing I found a bit jarring about the game at first was the fact that the game had little to no overworld music. Like I can't say it's like quiet, but you know, the music isn't the loudest. It's not gonna be blasting all over the place. It's very quiet and serene, if I would say. I'm not too sure if that's the correct word, but it's quiet music and it's barely there unless you're really looking for it. And yeah, I found that a bit weird at first, but you know, I quickly got used to it. I don't know if it's also because of Breath of the Wild, which also has the same little to no music thing going on. It made me appreciate the moments when there was music even more. Like when I get to a boss room, I would be able to listen to the boss themes and appreciate them even more, and it would definitely set the tone. Because, you know, when there's no music in the overworld, it kind of feels empty, kind of like how the world is. Because, you know, there's very few people in the world and it feels empty and lonely, kind of. So when you reach the boss room and you hear like the boss theme, it very much sets the tone for me. And let me even just say, while we're on the topic of boss themes, oh my god, the boss themes freaking slap in this game. Like, I was already impressed by the title theme alone. I was like, look, this is enough. If there was no other bangers other than this, I would be okay with it. But there were more bangers in the game. I was like, what? the music just keeps getting better and better. With every boss that I go to, I was just amazed by the beautiful orchestral scores that were present. I was just in awe. And the music never got stale for me. Like, there were certain bosses I had to fight like 50 times because I died like one too many times. So I was always listening to their themes over and over again. And it never got stale for me. Like, there was never a time when I thought, you know what, I fought this boss like 50 times and I'm tired of hearing his theme. I never found myself saying that. I always enjoyed listening to it. And I think that probably means that the music score is pretty good. You know, I'm impressed. I like it a lot. Now, some of y'all have probably been waiting for this part. Let's talk about the combat and the bosses in this game. The combat in Elden Ring is surprisingly, can I say, basic. It's one of those things where it's like, once you understand it, but you know you have to get used to using it. I feel like if you're familiar with the other Souls games already, this will probably maybe even be the same. I can't confirm because, you know, I have nothing to compare it to, this being my first Souls game. But I guess if you're familiar with the other games, this is probably gonna be a cinch for you. You will already be used to how the controls work. But of course, you know, for me, it's my first Souls game, so I kind of had to get accustomed to a lot of things, even just learning little things to do in battle, like little tips and tricks, stuff like the fact that if you jump before you attack somebody, it does more damage, or like poise damage or something like that. I don't remember the exact explanation for it, but I just know that jumping before you attack somebody is good. So I do it all the time now. The game also offers a very wide variety of weapons. So again, this is another one of those things where it's like, it's up to you and your playstyle. So whichever kind of weapon, if you're like, you know, you want something that's lighter for like a faster kind of build, or like a heavy weapon that's slower but does like more damage, like all those kinds of things, it's pretty much up to you. For me, I used the katana. I was maining katanas almost all the way. At some point, I think I even ditched my shield because I was doing sword and shield. At some point, I even ditched my shield to just dual wield katanas. And I think that was like my end game build. The combat in Elden Ring never got stale for me. It never just felt like I was just pressing buttons or going through the motion. I was always actively present in whatever fights I was in, even if it was just with regular enemies or whether it was with a boss. I was always there. It just never feels like I'm doing it just for the sake of, you know. And to make combat even cooler, the game has these things or enchantments called Ashes of War. And basically, Ashes of War are enchantments that you can put on your weapons that allow you to use like certain kind of, like, put it loosely, like powers? Ashes of War are so diverse that it could be anything that, like, something that maybe allows you to like shoot fire from your sword, to something that allows you to shoot like a huge magical laser and kill the enemy really quickly. So Ashes of War are so diverse that if I ever felt like gameplay was getting stale for me, if I was getting bored, if I wasn't, you know, doing as much damage as I think I should be doing, I will probably just switch to a different Ash of War, and all of a sudden combat is greatly different. There are, I think, about 91 in the game, so, you know, there's quite a bit to choose from. But usually, I feel for me, it's once you find the one you really like, that kind of becomes your main, and you usually use it till endgame. I mean, that's what happened for me. I found this Ash of War that fit my playstyle perfectly, and it's what I used till like endgame. I never ever used any other Ash of War for my first playthrough. Another thing that the game also gives you access to combat-wise is these summons called Spirit Ashes. So like, Spirit Ashes are basically a summon that you can summon when you're in a fight for like some extra help. There are like a bunch of different summons, not too sure about the exact number, but there's like a bunch of different summons that you can have alongside you in battle, and they're usually very helpful. they all, because of how diverse they all kind of are different. Like, they do different things. Some of them are better as distractions. Others are good for helping you fight, to also do a bunch of damage as well. It's really up to you. Of course, these Ashes of War can't really carry the fight for you. You can't just summon them and run away. So they're just, there to aid you a little bit. So those were really helpful for me. I used those basically in all my major fights, like main boss fights, even just general bosses. I used spirit ashes whenever I could. They're very helpful. Now, let's talk about enemies. So the game has multiple types of enemies. There's the regular enemies, which you find randomly just strewn across the lands between. There's the bosses, which are usually found in boss rooms / dungeons across the lands between. And then there's the main story bosses. And these guys are the big bosses with like a bunch of lore. And usually you will have to beat them if you want to sort of progress to the next part in the story. When I started the game, I was scared to even fight the regular enemies, especially if they were in a group. They would literally just jump you and you were gone. Or that was like the worst part. But after I spent time getting accustomed to how combat works in the game, understanding the little bits and pieces of combat and just getting to understand combat better, I was able to start taking out these enemies one by one, and eventually, even if they were in a group, I wouldn't be too terrified of them. And it wasn't just learning the enemies. As of course, leveling up is very important, because that of course makes your stats better, so it makes you stronger and whatnot. And leveling up also really helps, because you start being able to see the progress you're making. Like, maybe before certain enemies would need 5 hits to die, you level up a little bit, maybe it's 3 hits, eventually it's a 1 hit, and there's nothing better than that feeling of being able to see that you're making a bunch of progress. Actually, you know what? There is a feeling better than making progress. It's seeing this. Killing bosses and main story bosses is pretty challenging, especially early game. I actually had to pay attention to their attack patterns so that I would be able to know when to dodge attacks, or when to block attacks if I needed to, or when an enemy would become vulnerable so that I could attack them. It's definitely not easy. My first few bosses took me multiple tries, especially the first main story boss, because that was when I was very much still fumbling my way across the game and I didn't really understand my stats or my equipment or anything. But usually, if you've got the enemy's attack patterns down, if you've got good equipment and you're sufficiently leveled, it's basically a ticket for success. It basically means that you're good, you're gonna clear the boss, and it'll be fine. Elden Ring was a game that all throughout my first playthrough never got stale for me. If I was bashing my head up against a certain boss and I kept on losing and I didn't know why, it was very easy for me to just leave and go fight another boss and level up, and by the time I come back, I'll usually even be a little bit over leveled and the fight would be really easy for me. The game offered me so much freedom that I was almost always busy in game, because if you're not doing main story bosses, there's side quests that you can do from the different NPCs, and those side quests were a great touch, I think, because usually those side quests are deeply ingrained in whatever lore that same NPC might have, so you end up getting to know a little bit about them, and maybe even grow a little bit attached to some of them, because you understand them a little bit better, you understand their motivations and everything. So those were a very nice touch, and it's in those things that you end up finding the little bits and pieces of Elden Ring's story. Most people will argue and say, Elden Ring doesn't have a story, but it's in all the little things that you do you kind of course, it's up to you to stop and piece stuff together. It's not spelled out for you. I mean, well, some of it is. Usually the main story bosses, the story accompanying them is pretty much spelled out for you. But you know, the smaller bits of lore, the smaller bits that fill in the gaps left by the bigger pieces of the lore that comes from the main bosses, it's filled in by those little side quests, and I enjoyed those. They never felt like a chore to me. And for me, usually, if a game has quests that don't feel like a chore to me, then I think it's a good game. Needless to say, Elden Ring is a game that really grew on me, and it caught me by surprise. If you told me from like 3 years ago that I was going to enjoy a FromSoft game the way I've enjoyed Elden Ring, I would definitely tell you that you're lying. Because I've enjoyed Elden Ring, and I actually think it's probably my favorite game that I played last year. Yeah, this is kind of spoilers for my list video. Ooh. But you know, yeah, once I understood how stuff in Elden Ring worked, it became very enjoyable to me, and I started looking forward to playing the game, you know. The world itself is also just really fun to explore. I wanted to explore everywhere because it was fun to explore. Elden Ring isn't an easy game, but it's definitely an experience that I won't be forgetting for a long time. Alright guys, so that's been my time with Elden Ring. Have any of you played it yet? Are you planning on picking it up? Is a friend of yours playing it, or is a friend of yours planning to pick it up? You know, let me know in the comments. You know, send this video to them. Who knows, maybe it might help them out. Don't forget to follow me on all my socials. As usual, the links will be in the description below so that you can see what I'm doing when I'm not here. I'd also just like to take this time to thank everybody for helping me hit 500 subs. Yay! I'm really grateful to everybody for supporting me in everything that I do. Thank you for watching the videos. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. I'm hoping that 2023 can be an even better year for all of us. So, Happy New Year, guys, and I'll see you next video. Bye!